The cameras were already rolling when Kensington Palace released a brief, carefully worded statement. It looked routine. It sounded diplomatic. But within minutes, royal insiders began whispering the same phrase. This changes everything. Behind the palace gates, silence fell heavier than ever before. What had the king rejected? And why did it leave William and Catherine facing their most devastating moment yet? Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The announcement arrived without warning, tucked into the late afternoon cycle when attention is usually scattered and scrutiny is thin. Yet this time, every word felt sharpened, deliberate, almost defensive. Kensington Palace described the king's decision as a strategic recalibration, a phrase so polished it seemed designed to soothe. But those who understand royal language heard something colder beneath it. Recalibration meant retreat. It meant something had been pushed too far. And most striking of all, it meant that a proposal put forward by William, carefully constructed, privately negotiated, and deeply personal, had been refused at the highest level. There was no accompanying photograph of unity, no reassuring quote from Buckingham Palace. Only a narrow statement that confirmed discussions had taken place and that alignment within the institution remains paramount. Alignment. The word echoed ominously. Alignment implies misalignment. Harmony suggests prior discord. And for seasoned observers, the subtext was impossible to ignore. This was not a minor disagreement. It was a line drawn. Reports began surfacing almost immediately that William had spent the previous 48 hours in urgent consultations. His schedule quietly cleared, his tone noticeably tense during private engagements. Those close to the Prince of Wales described him as composed but blindsided. He had believed his proposal, crafted with the future in mind, would be welcomed as evolution. Instead, it was met with refusal, not delayed, not amended, rejected. And then there was Catherine. When she appeared for her first public duty following the announcement, her composure remained intact. But something subtle had shifted. Her smile did not linger quite as long. Her voice, though steady, carried a weight beneath it. Those who study her closely noted the tightening around her eyes, the careful restraint in her posture. She said nothing about the king's decision. She didn't need to. The silence spoke for her. Across the country, speculation ignited. Was this merely a disagreement over structure and priorities? Or was it something deeper, a fracture between reigning monarch and future king? Social media dissected every syllable of the statement. Commentators questioned whether this signaled tension not just within policy, but within bloodline. Because in the monarchy, rejection is rarely procedural. It is symbolic. It reshapes hierarchy. It tests loyalty. What made this moment so destabilizing was not only the king's refusal, but its implications. If William's vision had been deemed misaligned, what did that say about his readiness? If Catherine's influence had shaped the proposal, what did it mean for her growing role? The rejection cast a shadow not just over an initiative, but over their standing within the institution itself. And beneath it all lingered a quiet suspicion whispered in royal corridors that this was not simply about modernization or messaging. It was about control, about timing, about who holds the authority to define the monarchy's next chapter. As royal watchers dissected every word, one unsettling question lingered: what exactly had William asked of his father that warranted such a decisive rejection? Behind closed doors, far from the velvet ropes and waving crowds, a proposal was laid before the king, one that William believed would modernize the monarchy and secure his family's future. Instead, it detonated a generational conflict. The king didn't hesitate. His answer was swift, final, and devastating. What was meant to be a bold new chapter suddenly became the spark for a royal rupture. What William placed before his father was not reckless. It was calculated. A blueprint for a streamlined monarchy, leaner, more focused, less entangled in ceremony and more rooted in direct public engagement. He envisioned Kensington Palace operating with greater autonomy, shaping its own charitable priorities, speaking with a clearer voice, responding faster to a rapidly shifting world. It was not rebellion, it was evolution. Or so he believed. Catherine stood firmly beside him in this vision. Over the past few years, she had quietly transformed from supportive consort to strategic force. Her understanding of public sentiment, her instinct for tone, her disciplined restraint had earned admiration across generations. Together, they crafted what insiders described as a modern royal identity, one that preserved dignity but shed unnecessary distance. They wanted relevance, not ritual, accessibility, not aloofness. It was bold, yes, but it was also measured. And in their minds, necessary. The king, however, saw something else. Where William saw progress, he saw instability. Where Catherine saw connection, he saw risk. To him, the monarchy's survival depended not on adaptation at speed, but on continuity at all costs. He had spent a lifetime preparing to defend the institution's traditions. He was not about to dilute them now. And so when the proposal was formally presented during a private council gathering, the tension was immediate. Those present would later describe the atmosphere as strained, voices controlled but firm. William spoke with conviction, outlining public support, long-term strategy, the need to future-proof the crown. The king listened, his expression unreadable. Advisors shifted uneasily. And then came the resistance. Questions about hierarchy, concerns about precedent, subtle reminders that autonomy within a monarchy is a dangerous phrase. What began as discussion hardened into confrontation. Senior advisors reportedly warned the king that William's rising popularity was reshaping public expectations. Poll numbers, media narratives, the growing admiration for Catherine, all of it pointed to a future that seemed impatient. Some feared that granting Kensington greater independence would create a power center too strong too soon. Others suggested that the proposal, though well-intentioned, risked overshadowing the sovereign himself. And in a system built on singular authority, that possibility was intolerable. But beneath policy and protocol lay something far more fragile. This was not simply a disagreement between monarch and heir. It was a father rejecting a son's vision, a son who had waited patiently, who had respected hierarchy, who had stepped carefully in the shadow of the throne. The king's refusal carried weight beyond governance. It questioned timing. It questioned judgment. It questioned trust. For William, the sting was unmistakable. For Catherine, the implications were personal. Their carefully constructed path forward had been halted in a single exchange. The proposal that was meant to secure their legacy had exposed the fault lines beneath it. And as the meeting concluded without compromise, one truth settled heavily over Kensington Palace. This wasn't just about the crown's direction. It was about who controls it and when control must be surrendered. But the king's refusal didn't remain confined to palace corridors. Its consequences would soon ripple through William and Catherine's carefully built world. For years, Catherine had been the monarchy's quiet strength, poised, composed, unshakable. But insiders say this latest rejection struck her deeper than anyone expected. Not because it was political, but because it was personal. Cameras caught a fleeting moment, a tightened jaw, a distant gaze that spoke louder than any statement. Was the Princess of Wales now caught between loyalty to her husband and deference to the king? Behind the polished appearances and carefully measured words, Catherine had not simply supported William's proposal, she had helped shape it. Over months of private discussions, late-night briefings, and strategic planning sessions, she became one of its strongest architects. Her instinct for public mood, her ability to connect across generations, her steady understanding of what the modern monarchy must represent, these were not accidental qualities. They were cultivated, and she poured them into a vision she believed would safeguard not only the institution, but her children's future within it. Those close to Kensington Palace began quietly acknowledging what had long been whispered. Catherine was no longer just a symbol of continuity. She was becoming a force of direction. She weighed in on language, on outreach priorities, on how the monarchy could speak with compassion without surrendering authority. The proposal carried her fingerprints, subtle, refined, unmistakable. And when the king rejected it, he wasn't simply dismissing an administrative plan. He was pushing back against a future she had helped design. Public speculation intensified almost immediately. Commentators questioned whether her growing influence had unsettled traditional power structures. Some framed her as visionary, others implied overreach. Each headline, each opinion piece added pressure to an already fragile moment. Catherine, disciplined as ever, said nothing. But silence, in a family so scrutinized, becomes its own language. At her next engagement, observers sensed restraint. Not weakness, never weakness, but a recalibration. She chose her words carefully, smiled with intention, avoided commentary that could be misread as defiance. Yet beneath that composure was something harder to disguise: disappointment. Palace insiders would later hint that she believed the proposal was respectful, measured, even cautious. To see it dismissed so decisively left more than strategic questions, it left emotional bruises. And still, she carried on. That is what she has always done. She stood beside William not only as wife, but as anchor. In private, she absorbed his frustration, steadying him when anger threatened to surface. In public, she projected unity, ensuring that no crack widened under the glare of attention. But that balancing act came at a cost. Loyalty to her husband demanded solidarity. Respect for the king required restraint. And navigating both meant swallowing her own reaction. There is a quiet strength in Catherine that has often been mistaken for passivity. It is anything but. It is endurance. It is calculation. It is understanding that timing can be more powerful than confrontation. Yet this moment tested that strength in new ways. Because this rejection was not simply about policy. It questioned her judgment, her role, her growing voice within the institution. And somewhere beneath the surface, a deeper conflict began to form, a tension between vulnerability and resolve. Would she retreat into caution, limiting her influence to preserve harmony? Or would she double down, quietly refining the strategy that had just been denied? The answer was not yet visible. But one thing was clear: this experience would not leave her unchanged. As Catherine carried the emotional burden with quiet grace, William faced a storm brewing beyond palace walls, one fueled by whispers of succession politics. Succession has always been the monarchy's most delicate subject. But after the king's rejection, speculation exploded. Was this more than a disagreement? Was it a calculated move to slow William's ascent? The heir to the throne suddenly appeared, isolated, his progressive vision blocked at the highest level. In the ancient game of crowns, every delay carries meaning, and every rejection leaves a mark. Within royal history, tension between sovereign and successor is nothing new. Power does not transfer gently in institutions built on permanence. It lingers. It resists. It tests. And now observers began drawing parallels to past eras, when heirs with bold ideas found themselves restrained by reigning monarchs determined to protect their authority. The pattern felt familiar, almost cyclical: a younger generation pressing forward, an older one holding firm. The difference this time was visibility. The world was watching in real time. William's popularity had been rising steadily, not through spectacle but through consistency. His measured tone, his direct engagement with communities, his shared presence alongside Catherine, all of it built a quiet momentum. Polls reflected growing admiration. Commentators increasingly referred to him not only as heir, but as future stabilizer. For some within palace circles, that trajectory was reassuring. For others, it was unsettling. Because popularity in a monarchy is both asset and threat. Whispers emerged that senior advisors had grown uneasy, not about William's intentions, but about perception. If Kensington Palace gained greater autonomy, if William's initiatives accelerated independently, would it create a dual center of influence? Would the narrative shift prematurely from reigning king to anticipated successor? These were not trivial concerns in an institution built on singular command. And so the rejection, viewed through that lens, began to resemble more than policy disagreement. It looked strategic. For William, the implications cut deep. He had never positioned himself as rival. Loyalty to the crown had defined his public identity. Yet now he faced a paradox: remain passive and risk appearing ineffective, or assert vision and risk being seen as impatient. Balancing ambition with allegiance became a daily calculation. Reports suggested frustration simmered beneath his composed exterior, not anger at his father as a man, but at the constraints imposed by the throne he was destined to inherit. Catherine understood that tension instinctively. Her role expanded quietly during this period, not through speeches or declarations, but through counsel. Protect the long game, she reportedly urged. Preserve unity publicly. Let time do what confrontation cannot. Her focus was legacy, ensuring that when their moment arrived, it would not be shadowed by open conflict. She recognized that the monarchy survives not by winning battles, but by enduring them. Yet the emotional complexity remained unavoidable. This was father and son, bound by blood and divided by timing. The king carried the weight of reign, William carried the anticipation of it. Each believed he was safeguarding the institution. Each feared miscalculation. And somewhere between duty and pride, a subtle rivalry threatened to take root not of affection, but of influence. Speculation intensified as commentators debated whether the king's refusal was a measured reminder of hierarchy, a signal that succession unfolds on sovereign terms, not public demand. If so, it was a powerful one. Because in delaying William's proposal, the king had not only preserved tradition, he had asserted control over the pace of change. And in doing so, he reminded everyone that until the crown passes, authority remains absolute. But such assertions rarely remain contained. The more palace insiders debated motives behind closed doors, the more the outside world began constructing its own narrative, one fueled by sympathy, intrigue, and rising expectations. Yet even as palace insiders debated motives, the public reaction began shaping a narrative neither side could control. Within hours, headlines turned sympathetic. Social media flooded with support for William and Catherine. But from Buckingham Palace, silence. The king offered no elaboration, no reassurance, no gesture of unity. In the absence of clarity, the public filled in the gaps. And in doing so, they may have unintentionally deepened the divide at the heart of the monarchy. The narrative shifted almost instantly. Commentators framed William and Catherine as bold reformers, whose vision had been stalled by an unyielding establishment. Words like forward-thinking and modern guardians of the crown dominated discussions. Analysts dissected the proposal's rumored details, praising its clarity, its courage, its acknowledgement of a changing world. And as admiration swelled, so too did contrast. The king, once widely respected for steadiness, was increasingly portrayed as resistant, even inflexible. Public frustration simmered beneath polite commentary. Why reject evolution when support for it seemed so strong? Why allow distance to grow when unity could have been displayed with a single joint appearance or statement? The questions multiplied because the answers did not come. Buckingham Palace maintained its composure, declining to expand beyond the carefully crafted phrase already released. That silence, dignified on the surface, felt heavy underneath. Strategic restraint or defensive withdrawal? No one could be certain. Royal commentators, sensing tension, leaned into the ambiguity. Some suggested the king was asserting necessary authority. Others hinted at generational friction that ran deeper than acknowledged. Every broadcast, every opinion column added layers to the story. And the more it was discussed, the more the perception of division hardened into accepted truth. The monarchy thrives on symbolism. And right now, the symbolism was stark. Youth aligned with change. Experience aligned with preservation. Catherine moved carefully through this storm. Each public engagement became a quiet exercise in discipline. She emphasized shared causes, collective values, family unity. She avoided any language that might suggest frustration or impatience, yet observers could sense the tightrope she walked. Supporters praised her composure, interpreting it as quiet resilience. Critics scrutinized her tone for hidden signals. In this atmosphere, even a pause between words became headline material. William, too, displayed visible restraint. His speeches remained measured, focused on service rather than strategy. He did not challenge the king publicly. He did not reference the rejection directly. But those who listened closely heard a subtle shift and undercurrent of determination woven through his usual calm. He spoke of responsibility, of long-term commitment, of preparing for the future without explicitly naming the obstacle before him. It was careful, it was deliberate, and it was telling. What made this moment so complex was the contrast between public encouragement and private uncertainty. The flood of support strengthened William and Catherine's standing. Yet it also increased pressure. Sympathy can empower, but it can also corner. If the public expected decisive change, how could they deliver it without further alienating the king? Every gesture now carried political weight. The divide, whether real or exaggerated, had become part of the narrative. And once a narrative takes hold, it shapes reality as much as events themselves. The monarchy was no longer managing a disagreement. It was navigating perception. And perception, unlike policy, cannot be controlled with a single statement. But while public sympathy swelled, a far more consequential decision was unfolding behind closed doors. 3 days after the announcement, a discreet motorcade entered Buckingham Palace under heavy privacy protocols. No press, no ceremony, just father and son alone. What transpired in that meeting remains unconfirmed, but insiders describe raised voices, long silences, and a single ultimatum that left William stunned. This was no longer about proposals or press statements. It was about the future of the crown and who would define it. The secrecy surrounding the encounter was absolute. Schedules were quietly adjusted. Senior advisors were informed only that discussions would take place without them. For a monarchy built on layers of council and ceremony, stripping the room down to 2 men spoke volumes. This was not theater. It was reckoning. The king, seasoned and resolute, faced the heir not as sovereign addressing subordinate, but as father confronting a son whose vision threatened to accelerate beyond his control. Sources close to palace staff later described the atmosphere as charged long before the first words were exchanged. William arrived prepared not with defiance, but with determination. He carried the weight of public expectation and personal conviction. The king, in turn, carried the authority of the crown and decades of preparation to protect it. Both believed they were defending the monarchy. Neither was willing to yield easily. The conversation reportedly began measured, almost clinical. Policy. Structure. Optics. But beneath those formalities lay emotion that could not remain contained. William pressed his case again, emphasizing unity through modernization, arguing that autonomy for Kensington was not fragmentation but strengthening. The king countered with warnings about precedent, about the danger of diluting centralized command. What started as strategy gradually became something raw, tone sharpening, pauses lengthening, restraint thinning. And then came what insiders have described as an ultimatum. Aligned publicly with the sovereign's direction, the king is said to have insisted, or stepped back from initiatives that imply structural independence. It was framed not as punishment, but as protection of order. Yet to William it felt like confinement. To abandon the momentum he had built would be to signal retreat. To proceed without approval would be to risk open fracture. The choice was deliberate, the pressure unmistakable. William did not capitulate. Reports suggest he remained composed but firm, refusing to renounce the principles behind his proposal. He did not raise his voice recklessly. He did not threaten. But he made it clear that his commitment to evolving the monarchy was not impulsive ambition, it was responsibility. That stance, however respectful, deepened the tension. Because in asserting his vision, he implicitly challenged the pace set by his father. Meanwhile, at Kensington Palace, Catherine waited. Not anxiously in panic, but in awareness of what this meeting represented. She understood that whatever emerged from those walls would shape more than policy. It would define the tone of the years ahead. Those close to her say she remained steady, offering no outward sign of turmoil. Yet internally, she braced for outcome. A compromise could mean scaling back influence. A refusal could mean escalating strain. Neither path was without cost. As hours passed, the weight of legacy pressed down on both men. The king guarded continuity. William advocated controlled change. The crown hung between them not as ornament, but as obligation. And when the meeting concluded, no triumphant resolution followed. No joint declaration. Only a quiet understanding that something fundamental had shifted. What may emerge in the coming weeks could resemble compromise. But insiders hint that any agreement reached will carry sacrifice, perhaps from William, perhaps from the king, perhaps from both. Because when power is negotiated within bloodline, victory rarely feels complete. And when William emerged from the palace that evening, something had shifted not just in strategy, but in spirit. Royal titles come with glittering privilege, but behind them lies a burden few can truly comprehend. For William and Catherine, the king's rejection was not just institutional, it was intimate. The pressure of expectations, the scrutiny of the world, and the weight of legacy collided all at once. In that collision, cracks began to show not in their unity, but in their sense of security. William had faced criticism before. He had weathered media storms, navigated family fractures, and carried the silent discipline required of an heir. But this felt different. This was not noise from the outside. It was resistance from within. Paternal disappointment carries a unique sting, especially when it arrives cloaked in constitutional reasoning. To the public, it was a strategic disagreement. To William, it was a moment that forced him to question timing, trust, and whether his judgment had been quietly doubted. He did not speak of it openly. He rarely does. Instead, those close to him describe a deepening introspection. A man raised to respect hierarchy now wrestling with the limits of his influence. He understood the king's caution. He even empathized with it. But understanding does not erase frustration. Balancing loyalty to his father with responsibility to the future became a daily internal negotiation. And the weight of that negotiation followed him everywhere. Catherine stood at the center of that tension, steady as ever. She became both shield and anchor, absorbing William's disappointment while presenting calm continuity to the world. Her composure was not performance, it was protection. She knew that visible strain would feed narratives of division. So she tightened the circle, focused on family routines, safeguarded moments of normalcy for their children. Because beyond the headlines were 3 young lives who did not need to feel the tremor running through the institution that defines their surname. The impact on their private world was subtle but undeniable. Security briefings became heavier. Schedules were adjusted with more care. Conversations that once revolved around initiatives and outreach began including strategic recalibration. How do they protect their path without escalating tension? How do they honor the king while preserving momentum? These were not abstract questions. They shaped dinner table discussions, late-night reflections, quiet reassurances exchanged after public smiles had faded. Maintaining unity in public required discipline that bordered on endurance. Every joint appearance was a message. Every shared glance interpreted. They understood the symbolism of standing shoulder to shoulder, of reinforcing partnership not only as husband and wife but as future sovereign and queen. Yet beneath that polished front was effort and emotional labor rarely acknowledged. Because unity is strongest when tested, and they were being tested in real time. In private, strategy shifted from confrontation to patience. William and Catherine began considering the long arc rather than immediate validation. If their proposal had been premature in the king's eyes, perhaps influence would be better built incrementally. Quiet alliances. Gradual evolution. Influence that does not demand permission, but earns inevitability. The pain of rejection became catalyst for refinement rather than retreat. And through it all, resilience emerged as their defining trait. Not loud defiance, not silent surrender, but persistence. The understanding that the monarchy is not shaped by single moments, but by sustained character. If this rejection revealed vulnerability, it also revealed strength. Because in choosing to endure rather than fracture, they reinforce the very stability they seek to modernize. Yet from moments of vulnerability often rise defining decisions, and this crisis may become the catalyst for transformation. Rejection can crush, or it can clarify. And for William and Catherine, the king's refusal may have ignited something far more powerful than defiance. Quietly, methodically, a new approach began to take shape, one that doesn't confront tradition head-on, but evolves it from within. The question is no longer whether they were rejected, it's how they will respond. In the weeks that followed, the tone from Kensington Palace subtly shifted. There were no renewed calls for structural change, no public insistence on autonomy. Instead, there was focus, precision, a deliberate narrowing of attention toward initiatives that could not be dismissed as disruptive. If sweeping reform had been deemed premature, then influence would be cultivated through depth rather than breadth. The strategy was no longer about reshaping the framework overnight. It was about reinforcing it from the inside until evolution became unavoidable. Catherine led much of that recalibration. She leaned further into people-centered causes, early childhood development, mental health, community resilience issues so universal they transcended palace politics. Her approach became more intimate, more rooted in lived experience. Rather than framing her work as modernization, she framed it as service. and in doing so, she strengthened her connection to the public without appearing to challenge the institution's hierarchy. It was subtle, it was intelligent, and it was effective. William, too, recalibrated without retreating. He did not abandon his core vision. He refined its timing. Public speeches emphasized continuity with the king's values, reinforcing loyalty while gently underscoring readiness. He spoke less about structural change and more about responsibility, stability, and preparation. To some, it seemed like a step back. To others, it looked like strategic patience. In truth, it was both a pause not of surrender, but of calculation. Their unity became more visible than ever. Joint appearances carried a renewed sense of partnership, each reinforcing the other's strength. Observers noted the synchronized messaging, the quiet solidarity in tone and cadence. If there had been any perception of fracture, they countered it not with denial but with presence. They stood together. They listened together. They advanced together. And that consistency began to reshape the narrative. There were also subtle signals of reconciliation with the king. Carefully choreographed engagements placed father and son within the same frame, emphasizing shared purpose. Language softened on both sides. References to tradition were paired with acknowledgments of future responsibility. It was not dramatic reconciliation, but measured alignment, proof that tension had not severed the bond. It had refined it. Behind the scenes, long-term positioning became the unspoken priority. William and Catherine understood that succession is not seized, it unfolds. By demonstrating resilience under pressure, by showing restraint in the face of rejection, they were building credibility that no proposal could manufacture. Emotional growth forged in conflict carries weight. It signals maturity. It signals readiness. And perhaps most importantly, it signals stability. What began as a setback had become instruction. They learned where resistance lay. They learned how perception shapes power. And they learned that influence within the monarchy often moves slower than public demand, but when it moves decisively. The crisis did not disappear. It transformed. It shifted from confrontation to preparation, from frustration to focus. And as they continue to navigate this delicate balance between tradition and transformation, one truth becomes increasingly clear. This chapter, painful as it was, may ultimately strengthen the foundation upon which their reign will stand. But even as the dust begins to settle, the monarchy stands at a crossroads, and the next chapter may determine everything. In the centuries-old story of the British monarchy, moments of tension often shape its destiny more than moments of triumph. The king's rejection has left scars, but it has also revealed strength. As William and Catherine navigate this defining chapter, one truth becomes undeniable. The future of the crown will not be handed to them quietly. It will be forged through conflict, resilience, and resolve. History has shown that the path between reigning monarch and heir is rarely smooth. There have always been seasons when vision clashed with caution, when youth pressed forward and experience held firm. Those moments did not weaken the crown, they refined it. And now, another such chapter unfolds. The king stands steady, unwavering in his duty to guard continuity. He believes preservation is protection. He believes timing is everything. To him, restraint is wisdom, and authority must remain singular until the very last moment it has passed. William has grown through this crucible. The rejection that once stung now sharpens his patience. He understands more clearly the invisible architecture of power, the careful choreography, the discipline required to lead without yet leading. The fire that fueled his proposal has not dimmed. It has matured. It no longer seeks rapid transformation. It seeks lasting impact. That shift is not defeat. It is evolution. Catherine, too, has emerged changed but stronger. The emotional strain that once tested her composure has deepened her resolve. She has learned how swiftly perception can tilt, how fragile momentum can be, and how essential steadiness becomes in uncertain times. Her quiet endurance has transformed into quiet authority. Not loud, not declared, but unmistakable. Together they have grown not only as public figures, but as partners navigating pressure that would fracture many others. The monarchy itself stands suspended between eras. Continuity anchors it. Change propels it. Too much of one risks stagnation, too much of the other invites instability. The king embodies continuity. William and Catherine represent the coming shift. The delicate balance between them will define how seamlessly the transition unfolds. And in this balance, perception matters as much as policy. The public is not merely observing, they are interpreting. Their confidence, their expectations, their sympathies will shape the atmosphere into which the next reign eventually rises. Yet through tension and recalibration, one constant remains: the bond between William and Catherine. It has endured scrutiny, conflict, and internal resistance. It has adapted under pressure. That unity is more than personal. It is strategic, because when succession finally arrives, it will not rest on one figure alone. It will stand on partnership, on shared vision refined by challenge. So the question lingers in the air, heavy but unresolved. Will this rejection be remembered as a fracture or as the defining moment that strengthened a future sovereign? Will historians look back and mark this as the turning point when patience overtook impulse and preparation replaced ambition? Or will they see it as the first tremor of a deeper transformation within the House of Windsor? The answer has not yet been written, but one truth feels certain. Moments like this carve character. They reveal who bends and who builds. And if resilience continues to guide William and Catherine, then this chapter of tension may one day be seen not as setback but as foundation. Because in the House of Windsor, rejection is never the end of the story, it is often the beginning of a reign yet to rise. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.